So last time Korra's uncle had taken her to the South Pole to open the portal to the spirit world in order to try to bring balance, peace, and harmony. Then he filled the streets with his troops and blockaded the harbor, because in Unalaq's world there's spirits, awesome, and there's people, suck it. He says that someone might want to harm the spirits, so they need to defend the portal. That's why the troops are here, far, far away from the portal and stopping people from leaving the city with an overland path to the portal, because doing this anywhere near the portal would make it easier to guard and wouldn't piss everybody off. He distracts her from the soldiers stomping through the streets, forcing people behind barricades, by telling her that there is another portal in the north that needs to be opened. Once they've done that, then they can move between north and south in seconds, as opposed to now, which is, infinity, since you have the frickin' harbor blockaded. So, let's check in with something even more important than this pending civil war, Tenzin on his vacation.
It's so nice to get to spend more time with my family. And I've really enjoyed having you two around. Reminds me of all those great vacations we took as kids with Dad.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
I think your memory's a little foggy. Boomy and I weren't on those great vacations. It was always just you and Dad.
Oh, that's right. You were the shame of the family. My mistake. The reminiscing is interrupted by the news that the middle kid, Iki, is missing. Her brother and sister were teasing her, although with a name like that she should have gotten used to it by now. Tenzin and siblings are going to go looking for her, but first, we should probably get back with the whole goose-stepping through the streets of the Southern Water Tribe. Now, the problem with this thing is that technically the tribes are united under a single ruler, Unalaq. But it's a bit difficult not to take this as an invasion. Like if Obama suddenly showed up in American Samoa, quarantining the place and marching troops and tanks through the streets. That generates some serious pushback, wouldn't you think, even though technically he would have every right to do so. So, what we need is the Avatar version of Fox News to stop Unalaq. Yeah, that'd work. But Korra is convinced that Unalaq is doing the right thing, trademark, and she stands up for him at a meeting of the Southerners who are upset over this. But Varric pushes for them to fight back because Varric is awesome, and willing to use that to fight for independence from the North if that's what it takes. Korra sees this as starting a war, but her father blames this on Unalaq, pissing her off to no end. I mean, he's obviously wrong. Clearly a war is not started by someone who sends in warships and armed troops. They're just very enthusiastic about sharing their goodwill. Her father asks that she speak to Unalaq on their behalf, try to get him to see how this is pushing people to the brink.
Do it for me.
I'll do it for the tribe.
Oh yeah, I forgot. You hate him, because he didn't tell you something personal he's ashamed of that has nothing to do with you. What an asshole, huh? Varric is convinced that talking won't cut it. They need to prepare for the inevitable war. Speaking of a hellish conflict which will only end in misery, Bolin's relationship with Eska. It's downright crazy. She bosses him around like a servant and insists that he will be coming with her when they depart to live out his life in the Northern Water Tribe. So while we leave that burner on simmer, Korra needs to speak to Unalaq first about the possible civil war.
If the water tribes were at war, the other nations would take sides. The dark spirits would thrive off this negative energy.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
And the world would be thrown into a battle between spirits and man that would be catastrophic.
So, you'll back down then? No! He says that as the Avatar, Korra is required to be neutral in any such fight. Although he would say that since Korra would naturally side with her tribe, and that would mean he'd only have an entire army and navy to stand against her. But things are difficult out there. As we see, a group of soldiers are being sneered at by the crowd. And he can feel for both sides here. The locals see them as the instrument of Unalaq's oppression, and the soldiers are on the opposite side of the world from their homes, getting jeered at by bumpkins who don't like their chief who once saved their city from destruction. Tensions are high, and in what was no doubt intended as a parallel to the Boston Massacre, some kids throw snowballs at the soldiers, and things start to get real ugly. Korra tries stepping in, but the Southerners won't listen. Her unwillingness to help them is as good as being on the other side. It takes Korra's father stepping in to defuse the situation, because the Southerners respect him and are willing to listen. So Korra heads off, pissed off that he didn't allow people to start killing each other in the streets. Doesn't he realize how that impacts her self-esteem? Get your priorities straight. Speaking of father problems, as they're searching for Iki, the issue of how Aang raised all of them comes up, with them insisting that Tenzin ignores his kids just like their father did because he was too focused on his duty. So he flips them off.
See what he's doing there, Boomy? Classic airbender technique. Cutting and running when things get tough.
No, not really, but admit it, you were half expecting it, weren't you? Soon night falls and Boomy starts telling stories about his military adventures. Well, tall tales about them anyway. But he's certainly brave. When they find footprints that can only lead down to the bottom of this spiral path, he's ready to leap the rocks as a shortcut to save hours and goading them into following. Which they do easily thanks to their bending, leaving them plenty of time to taunt him as he's trying to get down.
Under control.
He's down! Kaya uses some water bending to heal him while giving him a lecture on why it's stupid to try to do things that he knows he can't. Perhaps it was the fact you were taunting him to do it that compelled him. Just a thought. Things get really heated between the three. The source of their problems are: Boomy sees himself as the forgotten child because he lacks the water-bending connection that Kaya has with her mother and the air-bending connection Tenzin has with his father, so he acts out as a means to get some attention. Kaya resented the way that her father treated Tenzin, and so took it out on him for their entire lives. And Tenzin doesn't like the way that they mock his commitment to their father's legacy, so there's some tension there. Back in the south, the romance problems team up as Mako and Korra, who have had this problem of her thinking that all the men in her life are plotting against her, are on a double-and-a-half date with Bolin and the Red Rum twins. Afterwards, she vents at her mother over her dad, bringing up the being stuck down here for training was a deception thing, which I agree, that's a legitimate thing to be upset about. Although I suppose she had to have one eventually. Like sooner or later you'll get a straight flush in poker. If you bitch about everything, eventually you're going to bitch about something you actually are right about simply by chance. For instance, it's everyone in the South's fault that they won't listen to her and just accept Unalaq's dictatorial control of their territory. Can't they see how this impacts her? What a bunch of dicks. Korra learns about Varric's plan for a rebellion and thinks her father might be in on it. So as someone who was told that they have to remain neutral, stay out of this thing completely, she of course gets involved in favor of her uncle. And she wonders why the Southerners think she's against them. I'm neutral unless I'm against what you're doing. She finds what she thinks is her father kidnapping Unalaq. And to be fair, she doesn't resort to violence first, but she is favoring one side over the other by getting involved at all. It's not like in the street where she was trying to keep the peace before. So Korra fights them all, only to discover that the guy she thought was her father wasn't. So she saved the day, by a certain narrow viewpoint I guess, and she convinces Unalaq to put the men on trial rather than just tossing them in prison. See, he's not a dictator. He's willing to be talked into giving basic civil rights to his people. Unalaq 2016. Korra feels bad and apologizes to her father for thinking that he'd attack his own brother. And there's an attempt to resolve things, but their happy moment is Unalaq blocked. He comes in with soldiers to arrest Korra's parents as well. Uh-oh. What will happen? Friday is the exciting conclusion to Civil Wars.